Welcome back to the Growing Band Director Podcast. This is episode number 136, first in a 6-part series with Terry White. Terry, what's going on?
Not much. Trying to chill out after the holidays here.
Life's good.
Yes, very good.
So we are just doing 6-part series on grade 1 and 2 festival music for your band, marches, ballads, programmatic pieces, focus pieces kind of thing, kind of trying to encourage people to go to festivals.
Yes, it's very important, I think, for everyone, the students and especially for directors, to go to festivals to get feedback, not so much for ratings and things. And there's a lot of ways you can handle that if you only go for comments only, or if you've done it before and you go for ratings or whatever. But important for the kids to perform and get feedback, especially a festival if it involves a clinic for you.
And if you're stuck in a place where like there is no festival within hundreds of miles of you, well, create your own.
Sure.
Like invite another band to come over and then have a guest clinician or two come in. And because the big thing is like, you know, getting that feedback, having somebody new in front of your kids, letting them travel outside your band room, outside of your auditorium, and like get on a bus and go do something, do a gig.
I remember one spring, I think Pat Misho up at Hamden Academy wanted to do something similar to MBDA, and it was late in the season. Not a lot of bands could manage to get there. So he had 3 or 4 bands, and he had myself, and I think it was Chip Farnham and some others come in just on a smaller scale. It was great.
So I think the biggest part is picking repertoire. So we're going to have 6 parts here. This is the first Thursday episode. We're going to do a grade 1, and then the next week a grade 2, and then a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. Each one of these is going to have 8 or 9 pieces. If you think of it as a program of, like, say, a march, a ballad, followed by a programmatic piece, we're going to do like 1, 2, 3, and then a new set, 1, 2, 3. Have really high standards for what pieces you let on your students' concert program. Keep listening until you find what fits them best. Customize, air quotes, each and every program to give them like it was prescribed, especially for them. If a piece is really cool, but does not fit them now, or for them to grow into shortly, then don't use it right now. These segments, like I said, will be broken up into 3 programs. So you can mix and match with any of these pieces that fit your band. If you really like a piece, put it on a list with some notes so that when it fits your band, you want to use it on a program, you have it available. If you think a piece is good for your kids in the next year or so, start a concert list for a little further down the line. All of these pieces are super cool. In grade 1 and 1.5, there's lots of doubles, no more than 4 parts at a time, typically, sometimes 3. Cues are very common, wide range of difficulty within each grade level. So choose wisely for your band based on the piece, not the number.
I think with the more recent publications, more so than when I started teaching a long time ago, grade 1 pieces were great for the wind players, but for the percussion, it was a drag because it was still quarter notes and eighth notes, no rolls, no 16th notes. But I'm seeing more now, and I think it's due to the development of the band method books that they're using. They get drummers right in on 16th notes, and that saves the piece and your rehearsal time because the drummers aren't bored to tears back there. Drummers can learn to play 16th notes and rolls because they're not worried about all the chromatic notes that the wind players have to learn. So.
All right, so the first piece of this series is going to be Fleet Street March by Laura Estes. And if anybody wants to hear more from Laura, episode 105, I had Laura on. We did a whole hour or so on that. It was a good session. This is an E-flat major, lots of syncopation. You can tell she did this to work on syncopation. And I like that the second strain is in C minor.
Yeah, I just took my notes right away from it.
Did I really?
Yeah. The fact that I really like the syncopation, and again, for many years, that was avoided at grade 1 and 2 level. And I'm not really sure why, especially as it depends on how you notate it. I think that's important as well. Sometimes you can notate the 4 eighth notes with the 2 middle ones tied, and then sort of gravitate to the 8th quarter eighth. Sometimes students have a little trouble understanding how that works. And it's cool that it goes to the minor in the second strain. I think it's refreshing. And it's not cookie cutter form.
There's no break strain.
Right. The trio is repeated and becomes the final strain, where oftentimes we might go to a dogfight section afterwards or something like that.
She's really good at writing funny music. So like she uses a woodblock in here. When was the last time you used a woodblock for a march?
No. The drummer spent most of the rehearsal looking for it. You know.
All right, let's listen to it. Fleet Street March by Laura Estes. were you saying about the dynamics?
For years on a traditional march, the first, second strain would repeat, and basically the same thing played again. And I would try to find things that I could do maybe slightly different, just rather than play it again. It could be a slight dynamic change. Sometimes you might have the brass lay out the first time and come in the second time. I don't think you really defeat the purpose of the composition. Oftentimes the composers will do that for you. I think it's important rather than just play it again.
Yep. Cool. Our next piece, again, that would be a good opener. Next piece is called Country Wildflowers by Larry Dan. This was recommended to us by Marissa. Thank you, Marissa. E flat major and B flat majors features low clarinet and tenor sax melody, and used with only grade level band. What did I write? I don't know what that means. That was my notes.
That was a piece that I was really looking forward to playing, and I could tell in the second reading of it, this was middle school, I think it was in 7th or 8th grade band, and the vibe wasn't there. And I brought it back 2 or 3 years later with a different group, and they totally loved it.
Yep.
So picking a piece for your group, you can tell usually right on it. I didn't want to spend the next 2 or 3 months working this to its concert and having to pound it at the kids. That was going to be not productive at all. So
I see what I wrote. I read it wrong. You can use this with any grade level band.
yes,
because all ballads are hard.
but I think it's important that if you have a high school group and you want to work on phrasing and balance, and you can play Song for Friends. Doesn't mean you have to perform it.
Mhm.
Where a middle school might do all that work and want to perform it. So this
Right.
is a little bit tougher than say Song for Friends, but it's very accessible.
All right, here's Country Wildflowers. Like I could hear the Marine Band play Country Wildflowers, and that would be life-changing.
Oh, the sound, the maturity of sound would be incredible. I mean, well, any of the bands that we hear at Midwest, the high school groups or college groups, it's music. Doesn't matter if it's challenging or not. I mean, I think you said one time, grade 1 in technical skills, grade 6 in musicality.
Right.
So that's we're here to make music.
Yep. So the next piece is a hoot. This is a classic piece. You know when Prehistoric Suite came out? It's by Paul Jennings. 90s at least.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was a Hal Leonard piece. I don't think it came out as a Jensen piece.
So this was recommended to us by Sarah and by Tony. It's in 4 short movements to represent 4 different dinosaurs.
It's a great opportunity for students to learn about a multi-movement piece. I mean, how many other middle school pieces are like that? And I look at it as an opportunity to teach the audience. You don't have to applaud after every movement.
Yeah.
You break the mood.
Yep.
And take a minute and explain that to the audience. Where else would they have learned that? You don't want them to be the only people at the end of the first movement of a Beethoven at the Butler Symphony Orchestra, and they clap.
So the movements are Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus, Pterodactyl, and the battle between Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops. So there's just so many different. It's great because like the imagery of each one. So Stegosaurus is this accented call and response piece. Brontosaurus it's called the gentle giant, right? The sliding trombones.
Yes, I put that the trombone glissandos, which the kids have done since the day they put their instrument.
That's why
together.
you play the
Yeah,
trombone.
Sure. Yeah.
Pterodactyl's graceful ghost of the sky is in 3/4.
That's my favorite movement by far. And the aleatoric playing in the fourth movement. Again, opportunities without investing lots of time and effort for young kids to learn these things. It's a good chance they're going to explore them when they get to high school.
All right, here's Prehistoric Suite by Paul Jennings. You had a tip about when you rehearsed that piece.
Yes, with middle school kids, when I would have rehearsal, I'd have the agenda written on the whiteboard. And I would always probably do one of these movements at the end for the sake of time. And mention to the kids, I always wrote in parentheses, if we have time. And the kids stayed totally focused because they really wanted to play this piece.
Again, those three pieces could have been a program, but again, we'll mix and match. So we're kind of onto our second set of program here. This is a William Owens march, which was recommended by Will, called Synergy.
Yeah, it's a great piece. Like I would do my beginning fifth grade students, start them in September, and they would do their April concert, let's say. And we would start full band in January. Pieces like this were great because they were a minute and a half, 2 minutes max. And I could do 4 or 5 pieces with them of different styles that I wanted them to know in their first year of playing. This would lay perfectly for them.
So this piece is in E flat major, as you mentioned, really short, but it's written in B flat. So why would composers do that?
Depending on where you are in your method book, students may have not, found that flat that, well, we know on trumpet, the default is always first valve,
Yeah.
regardless of what key you're in.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's in 4/4. Percussion is quarter notes and eighth notes. So again, this is like a true grade one.
Right. Very reminiscent of the, I think Alfred put out a series with John Kenyon. I was still using those in my final years of teaching. But we had to doctor up the percussion parts a little bit, but true grade one, quarter notes and eighth notes.
But say you're doing a grade one march and your percussion section is very weak. Well, here's a piece to do.
Perfect.
I mean, sometimes you're looking for more notes, but sometimes you're looking for less notes because you may not have that player who's ready to do it yet.
And if you have the multitude of percussionists, you find someone who will volunteer to play bass drum and hopefully have good time. But you also want to find someone to play cymbals and those things. And you kind of really pitch that. But most of the kids, they play drums because they want to play drums. And, 12 snare drummers can be a real challenge to balance.
Yeah. And bass drum and cymbals are where it's at.
Oh, sure.
I mean, that has to be right before anything else.
Right. And hopefully you can maybe introduce some of the kids to some mallet playing at the same time.
All right, here's Synergy March by William Owens. Okay, so the next piece is by the great one and only Michael Sweeney, who I just have to mention is going to be on a podcast session in February. Super excited for that. This is his version of Ye Banks and Braes, A Bonnie Doon.
This is great lyrical writing opportunity for teaching ethnic music. The length is perfect for second and third year players. Sometimes the pieces are a minute or two longer than we would like. And it, especially for younger kids, their attention level is a little short. It's also a great piece for advanced players to work on.
So it uses the Scottish snap, which typically is the 1E. Well, in this case, it's written as 1 and, but it still like refers to that. You can have kids listen to the original, and the value of doing a simplified classic band rep is huge.
And I think it's important because it has great melodies that the kids will like, rather than just playing a chorale with sort of a not as well-known melody.
The basses get the melody for a little bit too. It's the music. Like this is the music that Granger wrote just at a simpler level. He has such a knack of being able to do that.
He does.
One thing I wanted to mention is like creating a storyline. Michelle Fernandez taught me this, and I've done it with my kids. This would be a perfect piece to do this. Like, okay, let's listen to the piece. And then kids, I want you to write what's in your mind. Like if this is a movie, like what's happening in the story, and then let the band kind of talk through it. If you can have those dynamics, and then there's like a story that's happening as you play this piece, and it helps the kids like connect to the emotion of it. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. All right, here's Ye Banks and Braes, Bonnie Doon, arranged by Michael Sweeney. Okay, so the next piece would be a third piece on your program, but could also be a first piece. If you haven't met Tyler Grant, I did an episode with him. I forgot to write it down here, which one it was. It was recently, maybe 120s or so. His music is great. I wrote that this piece is extremely programmatic. with the slow opening, and it sounds like movie music. Going to the fast section, students will quote unquote love this piece. I don't know why I did that. I just said love. And important percussion parts. The concert tom part is pretty cool too.
Yeah, I had made a note that it's great for students who have never played a piece with more than one tempo. The sound effects in the beginning to set the mood is kind of cool. And like you say, it could be a movie score or something like that. And I think kids really relate to that because the energy of the ending and the students' enthusiasm controlling the tempo will be something to watch for the initial readings of the piece. I thought, the kids will just get into it and take off like a rocket.
Yes, a piece like this would work really well too as a third piece if you didn't have a traditional ballad, because there is a slow opening. It's like a minute or so. Because so what would you program? Like we did a march and then something that was maybe like Granger-esque, like as a middle tune, but wasn't a quote unquote lyric piece. You could do this and get like a minute of lyric music in and then go.
Well, we've always had the groups where you can say to the kids, I want to do this. They goes, yeah. I mean, to any piece you put in front of them. Then you have the kids, if it's any sense that it's going to be slow tempo or whatever, they're kind of, so this would be great for that because, I didn't do it that long.
And when I met with Tyler, he did say this was one of his top couple pieces. This and At Twilight, I think, are the most popular ones. So here's Ghosts of the Lost Ship by Tyler Grant. Yeah, listening to that Ghost of the Lost Ship again, I like that could be my theme song. It sounds like Pirates of the Caribbean, only simple,
exactly. Right.
I don't know if it's the chord progression of it or what he did with that, but it's so cool.
Well, also you look at the cover of the score. I mean, he sets the mood before you play one note.
Yep.
And cover art's important.
There's a super famous grade 2.5 by Brian Baumeister called Moscow 1941. I don't know if you know that piece, but it's got a really cool two-tom part. And this kind of reminds me of that, like one of the more important percussion parts is like this concert tom part. That's pretty simple, but again, for this grade level, that's a new thing.
Now, would you do this with your high school group?
So I had considered doing it this year with our freshman band, just as something to like get started with for the year. We didn't end up being able to use it, but
I've had some 8th grade bands that I would try this with that I'd feel comfortable trying anything with them. And there were some 8th grade bands that I'm not sure. Might be more work.
It is a 1.5. So, it depends on where your kids are at.
I agree.
All right. The next piece is written by, Gustav Holst, but arranged by Mike Story. This is the March from First Suite. So originally by Holst, this is the third movement in B flat, and it's written in 2/4 time. Here's March from First Suite by Gustav Holst, arranged by Michael Story. Again, an opening march that's under 2 minutes.
And it's so important for middle school students to play some of these classic pieces. And again, if you're thinking long-term programming, introduce this melody while they're in middle school, and then you could really dig into the original piece in high school.
And on one of these episodes, we're going to do the Michael Sweeney themes from First Suite, which has this, but at like a grade 2.5 level.
Right.
Yeah.
And I made the percussion parts, I think, are a half grade level more difficult than the winds,
Yep.
but that's okay. And it will keep the percussionists engaged.
One thing I like about the arrangement is that all the basses, the bass part is in tenor sax, trombone, baritone, bassoon, you know, like it's all one bass part in octaves.
Right. No, I think that's really important. I mean, we're basically trying to get the melody across, you know.
Yep. All right. So we are on our final program here for this grade level in this episode. The next one is called the Red Balloon, which is, I believe, kind of a harder grade one. Marissa and Glenn Schneider, who I had on a while ago, loves this piece. This is like classic young band piece by Ann McGinty.
I've done this several times with my middle school students, and they loved it. And then when I was teaching at a high school level, we went to the University of Maine. They had their wind and percussion day in February, and Ann was the guest, and she was going to conduct the band. And I did a lot of her pieces, and this was one of them. You know, it's probably fairly easy for a high school group. And the side note with Ann, I owe getting published to Ann.
How's that?
Because she heard one of my pieces that I wrote for the University of Maine, that Call to them All, and she said, "Are you getting published?" And I said, "I haven't really, you know, at this point, this is long before the internet and things like that. So you couldn't just shop your music around. You almost had to do it in person." And she really encouraged me. And then when we went to Midwest the following year, my wife and my son, Matthew, was just 2 years old. He was in a stroller. We went up just to say hi. And she had found this T-shirt that she gave to my wife that said, "My dad may be the director, but I'm the boss." That was really important.
That's
so
awesome.
I have a soft spot for Ann.
That's awesome. My notes, it's a classic piece of band rep that starts with flutes playing a floating melody, the imagery of a balloon floating through the air, a red balloon. Slightly longer piece. It's a little more than 3 minutes. It was very playful, and there's a tambourine and a trumpet solo.
Yeah, my students always felt like they were playing a movie score, and they're exposed to harmonies they don't tend to play, but they really like them, and a lot of nice, interesting, moving lines in the inner voices.
All right, here's the Red Balloon by Ann McGinty. So as a true composer, so we were talking about how this piece is based. First of all, if you don't have a decent flute section, don't do this piece. If they can't play in tune, don't ask them to do this piece yet. And then secondly, you're saying it was based on Lydian. I know what Lydian. Tell the people if they don't remember their music theory. What's Lydian?
Well, it's the fourth scale degree in the Ionian mode. If you, I just think of it in simpler terms. It's a major scale with a raised fourth.
Yep.
And it gives you that. You don't get that sense of the ta-da, we're in B flat, you know, that just gives you that little lift. It's a very cool. A lot of jazz guys use it like on the last chord of a piece. They'll use the sharp 11 or something like that. But in band music and orchestra music, it's very cool.
So that's a concept you can teach through this piece. All right. So our final one of the episode, again, we have this in as a third tune. This is Ancient Voices by Michael Sweeney. Again, I'm going to have him on in February. This was recommended to us by Tim McDonald. Thank you, Tim. I have written, this is a slow followed by fast. They get to blow air through the instruments as an effect. It uses the upper concert D flat a lot. And so it seems like that was a real point as he wrote this piece to use that because it happens in multiple parts. Flute section on recorders or flute as a soli. On recorders, why would you put? I don't know. I don't know. The fast section uses penciled on a music stand with accented percussion eighth notes. Singing on a single pitch at the fifth, so kids can find a note that fits their voice. I thought that was pretty cool. A short flute soli, and it's long for this grade level. It's almost 4 minutes.
Yeah, I made a note that the percussionists are totally engaged throughout. Again, so important if you're teaching middle school. Kids will play harmonies that they aren't exposed to. The striking of the music stand with the pencil is great because the kids will bring a pencil to rehearsal.
There's another piece by Jennifer Higdon called The Rhythm Stand at the grade 3 level that does that too.
Yeah. No, this piece would work great with kids. So.
Yeah. So here is Ancient Voices. And before we listen to it as the last one of this episode, I do want to remind you next Thursday, we are going to have part 2 of this series, which is going to be all grade 2 music, our first part. Let's see. Yeah, grade 2, part 1. So that's going to be next Thursday. Here is Ancient Voices, Michael Sweeney. We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.